Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We've got a great number of attendants today, 21. That is fantastic. Hi, my name is Stephanie Reed, and I am a consultant for Saltillo Corporation, and welcome to an implementation toolkit for AAC, Achieving Authentic Communication. We're going to get started here, and I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping items with you, and then we'll get this party started. All right. Well, if my PowerPoint, there we go. All right, so I just want to let you guys know that this presentation will focus exclusively on Saltillo products and applications and will not include information regarding other similar or related products or applications. And I am an employee owner of Saltillo Corporation. All right, for those of you that are just joining a webinar for the first time, if you look to the right-hand side, you will see a window pane, and it looks like this. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what each function of that window pane does. Right now, everyone is muted, and if you need to chat or have a question, there is a chat bar located at the bottom. And if you need to raise your hand and ask a question, you can do so with this little button right here. The red arrow can expand the control panel, or it can minimize it for you. And also in the material section is all of your ASHA information in the handouts, along with the outline that is for today's presentation. A note about the outline: if you have downloaded and printed that out, that is fantastic, because if you follow that outline, you're not going to miss anything. We've done a really good job in streamlining that for you and making sure that you're not spending a lot of time taking notes, and you can follow along very easily. You must stay on the presentation the entire time in order to receive your ASHA credit. So you must submit your ASHA participation form within 15 days of this presentation. And let's see. And like I said, those participation forms are in your materials section. All right, you should have your handouts. And if not, if you have any trouble with those, just chat in the window, and Lisa Tim, who's my moderator today, should be able to help you out with that. All right, here's our agenda for today. We are going to talk about communication and remind ourselves about what communication is and what that looks like. We're going to address authentic communication. We're going to define it and be able, by the end of this presentation, recognize it. We're going to talk about the functions or the reasons why we communicate. We're going to discuss our communication partners and their very important roles in the success of our AAC users. We're also going to look at environments and be able to recognize communication opportunities within our environments. Then the second half, we're going to talk about creating communication opportunities and why that is so important for our individuals who use AAC. And then along the way, you're going to receive other tips and tools. So first of all, let's take a little poll, and I would like to know who all is here. So the poll is open. So if you are, oh, it looks like, let's see. Okay, so it looks like we have a big number of SLPs or SLPAs. We have some teachers, which I think is fantastic. And also what I think is absolutely wonderful is that we have some parents that are attending. And this makes my heart sing, because not only are parents a big part of the team, they're the major part of the team, and it is good to see everyone working together here. So welcome, and for some of you that are on summer vacation, welcome especially. Thank you for attending. Authentic communication. Let's look at this. So we know that everyone communicates in a variety of ways for a variety of reasons. So let's look at the term authentic communication and just thinking to yourself, what do you think the word authentic means? Well, according to Webster's dictionary, authentic means real or genuine. It is our ability to order a cheeseburger without onions. It's our ability to say, I love you. It is authentic communication is our ability to talk about past and future events. So we know, like I said, everyone communicates in a variety of ways for a variety of reasons. And authentic communication is your ability to do that. It allows for true communication. So we know that real, authentic communication, real or genuine, is more than requesting and labeling. It's spontaneous and unique and efficient, and it allows you to connect with those around you. Let's take a look at this scenario here. We have a 61-year-old man post-stroke living in an assisted living facility. He obtained a device, and after only a few weeks, he was able to independently use the device to state his name, age, and other personal information. So looking at this scenario here, we're going to ask ourselves, is this a successful implementation? Yeah, it is. Yes, some of you say it is. It is a successful implementation. And let's take a look at why that might be. Because the staff viewed the device as a success, was successful for the user, for the man, for the gentleman to state personal information. So the staff's goal or function of communication that they were targeting was exchanging of information. So yes, so the staff thought, hey, you know, he's able to say my name is, I live at, my phone number is, give that basic information. And that's important, yes, when he is in different situations. However, no, it wasn't, because we forgot, the staff probably forgot to take into account what the gentleman's reason for communicate, what drove that gentleman to communicate, what was the reason for him learning to use the AAC system to communicate. You know, he really didn't care about stating his name and where he lived and telephone number because he is in an assisted living situation to where pretty much everyone knows that answer. Like I said earlier, that is important information to have and be able to express when we go to doctor's appointments or we're out in the community. However, this gentleman's drive or function to communicate was to talk with his grandkids. He wanted to talk to his grandkids and tell them he loved them. He wanted to tell them, he wanted to say, hey, Johnny, how was the soccer game last week? I hear you scored a goal. Hey, Sarah, tell me about the movie you saw last night. He wants to be able to have that authentic communication with his grandkids. So no, that really wasn't a successful implementation for him. And for him, his purpose was to maintain that social closeness. So when we are looking at implementation of AAC and achieving authentic communication, we have to remember and consider what drives our individual to communicate. I get a lot of questions. I get a lot of SLPs or teachers or even parents that say, hey, you know, they give me a call and they say, you know, the school placed this device for my kid, for my child, and, you know, they're not using it. They're not talking. How do I get my child to use the device? Or the SLP will call me. The school AT team, you know, decided that this was a great device for my student. However, he's not using it. How do I do this? A lot of the times we get bogged down with the technology and we forget that the technology is just a tool. So I explained to them that you are doing language therapy. You are doing expressive, receptive, pragmatics. You are doing language therapy with this individual, and you're using the device as your tool. So we need to remember to take the focus off of the technology, and it's not about the computer, it's not about the technology, but put the focus back on communication. And remembering that technology is just a tool, and it's the people and their interactions between them that must be our focus. So what is communication? We're going to talk about the functions of communication or reasons why we communicate. We're going to break it down. Functions, the environments in which we communicate, and communication partners. And I want you to take a look at all these arrows and how you see how the arrows are pointing each other and they're going round and round. We're going to find out that the parts of communication, all of these rely on each other in order to succeed in communication. So let's talk first about the functions or the purpose or reasons for which we communicate. We do this for, functions of communication. We do it to build relationships, to learn, to share experiences, to manage healthcare needs, and to participate as full citizens in society. The functions of communication are communicate wants and needs, exchange of information, develop social closeness, and fulfill social etiquette. But for today's purposes, we're going to combine those last two into social closeness and etiquette. So today we're going to talk about the three functions of communication. And remember that communication is complicated, and it's a multimodal process that rests on various types of knowledge and skills, and it involves the interaction of all three of these. Okay, communicate wants and needs. Your typical communicating wants and needs looks like this.
I want to eat pasta. Good job.
Okay, little Meredith just said, I want to eat pasta. That is your typical request objects. But requesting includes a lot of things going beyond just requesting an object or food or drinks and toys. It's requesting help. It's requesting attention. It's requesting an activity. It's requesting permission. Going back to requesting attention, how many times have we been kicked, bit, spit, and all that good stuff when all they wanted was our attention? And if we gave them the tool to request attention properly, we could decrease those behaviors. Directing an action, directing someone to stop. So if you could use the word go to direct an action, or the word stop, obviously. Accepting or rejecting and requesting permission. So you see, it includes a lot of things going beyond that requesting an object. Here's an example of directing an action. The speech pathologist here is telling this individual that she can use the word go in order to turn the page. That is directing an action. Whoops, I thought, let me see. There we go.
Whenever it was time for me to turn the page, I want you to say go, okay? Oh, sure thing.
So our next function of communication is exchanging of information, and that is what we talked about earlier with the gentleman that was in the assisted living situation of stating personal information. But let's look at what exchanging of information entails. It's asking and answering questions. So remember little Miss Meredith, she requested that object. I want to eat pasta. Let's look at her ask a question to exchange information. Is it ready yet? Okay, so she was not, her first function was to request an object. Then the next function was to exchange information by asking a question. Exchanging of information means to share and show objects, discuss upcoming and past events, confirm or deny. We can label and state our opinion. And then again, once that is that, then again, that's state personal information. And let's take a look at Drew. Drew is a little older. He, I believe, is in middle school, and he is using his device to state personal information, which falls under the exchange.
Hi, my name is Miss Nikki. What is your name? Oh, can you tell me again? Okay, I didn't get it. So then what would you do? Okay. Yeah.
My name is Drew.
Oh, Drew, nice to meet you. Well, like I said, my name's Miss Nikki. Yeah. Where do you go to school?
At my school.
At middle school?
Mm-hmm.
What's the name of your middle school?
Didn't quite get that.
I go to school at Freeburg Middle School.
Freeburg.
Oh. I think we might have Freeburg.
Yeah.
Can you say it? Well, thank you. Freeburg.
Would you like to ask us a couple questions?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's
There you go. Who are you going to ask? Miss Nikki, Mrs. Richards, Miss Amanda. No. I'm going to ask Amanda. Okay.
Okay. And then this is your information, and then up here are the social questions.
Yeah. You're going to ask Miss Amanda? Yeah. Okay. What are you going to ask her?
Where do you go to school?
Where do I go to school? I don't go to school anymore. I graduated.
She's all finished with school. Okay, so maybe
I think she probably has a job now.
What kind of work do you do?
What kind of work do I do?
we gotta look at her. Make good eye contact.
You're asking her, so listen. Not at me.
I know. Hi, good morning. I work for Saltillo, which is the company that makes your NovaChat device.
Oh.
I'm a speech therapist like Miss Nikki and Miss Richards. It's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
Is that cool beans?
Do you have another question for her?
Oh.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can ask her one or two more questions, and then we'll move on. Okay.
What's your favorite TV show?
Ooh, what's my favorite TV show?
I like how you looked at her.
I like to watch, you know what, silly? I like to watch Jeopardy.
Oh.
Have you ever seen Jeopardy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, what's your favorite TV show?
Mine? Yeah, mine.
Oh,
I don't understand that quite. I'm sorry, bud.
okay. That's all right. We'll see.
My favorite movies are Men in Black, Iron Man, Hotel Transylvania, and
Good
Scooby-Doo.
view.
And Scooby-Doo. Those are good ones. Those are your favorite movies. What's your favorite TV show?
My favorite TV shows are Wipeout, Batman, Spider-Man, and X-Men.
Batman and Spider-Man. Very cool.
Okay, so there you saw Drew exchange information. You also saw that joint attention when he turned to Amanda and he was communicating with Amanda. He exchanged his ideas. He stated his opinion. He asked and he answered questions. But also, what else did he do? He did not know Amanda. Amanda was new. She's one of our consultants, and she was recording. So not only was he exchanging information, he was also gaining that social closeness and etiquette by asking her questions. So social closeness and etiquette is manners, greeting, closing, teasing, taking turns, expressing feelings, playing games, gossiping, commenting, even telling jokes. There are times that I'm in a situation where it's new people or I'm in a social situation and I want to gain that social closeness with a group, so I'll just say something sarcastic or I'll throw a joke out there, and that brings us a little bit more together. So let's look at what tell jokes means. And in our devices, I believe in our social page or in our groups, there are jokes that we have pre-programmed in there. And this is what one of those pages looks like.
That no other animal has.
What?
Kittens. What does a dentist call his x-rays?
What?
Want.
Oh, you messed it up.
Ooh. Toothpicks.
Oh, toothpicks.
Now you tell one.
Yeah, I'm supposed to tell a joke? I don't know any jokes.
I mean, you. Me too. Aha. Uh-huh. Wanna hear a knock-knock joke?
Yep.
Knock-knock.
Who's there?
Dwayne.
Dwayne who?
Dwayne the bathtub. I'm downing.
This was awesome.
Okay, that was telling jokes, and she was talking to her mom and telling jokes, and apparently she does this a lot, and this is her way of gaining that social closeness within the community in and out of the classroom. So let's talk about the vocabulary in our AAC systems. When you are looking at the vocabulary when you're wanting to address the functions of communication and you want your AAC user to do that, you need to consider what vocabulary they have within their system. So you need to consider what your individual can or cannot say with their vocabulary. So also note that there are limitations with certain files. So you want to make sure that their file won't limit their ability to achieve that authentic communication. In our files, in our vocabulary files, we have spelling, which it is what it is. You spell your message to communicate. We have pre-programmed sentences, pre-programmed phrases. We have individual words and a combination. So you need to think about how the AAC user's vocabulary is organized. All right, in your materials section, you should have downloaded a couple of handouts, and in one of your handout, it should have a piece of paper that has a chart like this on there. So we're going to take about 3 minutes. And what I want you to do is I want you to list the 10 things you communicated today. It doesn't really have to be today since for some of you guys it's 9 a.m., but you can think of a situation yesterday, the first 10 things that you communicated, and I want you to jot those down. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to show you an example of what mine looks like so you can get an idea of what we're looking for. So what we're doing here is we're doing an activity that's going to help us further understand the role of what each communication function plays in our daily life. So what we're doing now is we're taking a look at your communication, and you're listing the first 10 things that you communicated. Okay, about 30 more seconds. Okay, so now the next part of this activity is thinking back on what we've discussed about the functions of communication, wants and needs, exchanging of information, gaining social closeness and etiquette. Go back and look at your first 10 things, and I want you to put a check mark or an X in each column that your communication of the function that your communication addressed. And it can be one, it can be all three. This is an example of what mine looks like. As you're doing this also, I want you to think about where most of your communication occurred and when did you communicate that, and think about how your communication would change if you did this for a meeting with friends or playing with your child. But for right now, let's look at what you communicated and then what functions of communication did you address for your communication. And one more thing, when you are finished with that, I want you to tally them up and see how many you have in each. As you can see with mine, my wants and needs are 3, exchanging of information is 7, and my social closeness and etiquette is 4. So this is what it kind of looks like in a pie chart. And most people find that the majority of their communication occurs to exchange information and or develop that social closeness. So according to Kumley and Light, what they did was they explored they explored how the different functions of communication changes over your life. So based on their work, if you look at the functions of communication across the ages, you're going to see that the percentage of time spent communicating for each of these different functions, they change over time. So for the infant and young child, you'll see the interactions to fulfill wants and needs and develop that social closeness are dominant. And then if you go through the school and vocational activities of the older child or adult, they give greater attention to the interactions which involve the exchange of information, as well as to those that promote that social closeness. And then right here, as you can see, for the older adult, the need for social closeness, that may increase. And this depends on their independence as well. So the expression of needs and wants may continue to play that important role, but you can see that social closeness and etiquette is the dominant one. So once again, we're going to think about your AAC user. Okay, think about them and ask yourselves, could your individual achieve authentic communication if you had only one piece of that pile? Whoops, I'm jumping ahead, my fault. So we know that only giving someone wants and needs is only giving them part of that pie, and it's not authentic. All right. Your next activity you should have had downloaded in your materials is choosing functions to target. So what we're going to look at here, and this is how I kind of best explain how to do or how to look at this worksheet. So right down at the lower left-hand side, you're going to see this little half circle here, I want you to think about if you have a student or an individual using AAC that you're here for today in mind. I want you to picture that individual right here in your lower left-hand corner. Now what I want you to do is over to the right, you're going to see functions of communication. And here's our three: wants and needs, exchange information, social closeness, and etiquette. So you see the three. Thinking about our individual, we're going to plan what functions we want to target with them, or we want them to target. So for example, if I want to target the function of wants and needs, this wants and needs will be my goal. So what would be my objectives? So let's see, requesting help. I want them to be able to request permission or request objects. And same goes for if I wanted the goal of exchanging information, how would I want them to exchange information? I want them to be able to share and show objects. I want them to state an opinion or confirm and deny. And then lastly, the social closeness is the same thing. I want them to be able to greet and close, gossip, express manners. So here's an example. So I say Sally's speech. I want her to be able I want to target the three functions of communication. And so therefore I want her to be able to request objects. What words do I want Sally's speech, or whatever I said her name was, what words do I want her to have access to and be able to use to request objects? And greeting peers and directing an action and commenting. I'm going to give you about a minute to just kind of look at that and think about your individual that you're here for today, or you may have several individuals that you're here for today, but just keep them in mind and think about their current AAC system and what words they have access to, what vocabulary they have access to, and will they be able to meet those objectives to attain their goal. This is another, it's just a quick way to target other communicative functions besides requesting, okay? Okay, that is, as you can see, I wanted to go back. You should have these in your material section. If you look at the bottom of the PowerPoint, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see that toolbox. That means that it is a tool we're giving you to put in your AAC toolkit. So this is you have a blank one in your materials, and it's something that you can have to use with any of your individuals. So that is a tool to go into your AAC toolbox. All right, we looked at functions of communication, and the three functions, what they were. So remember when I asked you to think about how your communication would change if you were meeting a friend or you were playing with your child? Well, this is a way to get you thinking about how the environments affect what you say. So let's look at environments. This is how and where we communicate. We need to consider the features of the environment. So when we're looking at environments, we need to ask ourselves the three questions: who, what, where. Who is communicating? What's happening? What is heard? What is seen? What is felt? Where are things located? Where is that device? Where is the AAC user? Where are the communication partners? Where are the objects in the room or the environment? Other factors that we need to consider when we're looking at the features of the environment are storage and accessibility of the device, time, how long it takes to generate a message, and maybe the potential threats of damage like water, saliva, or other peers. All right, we're in this environment right here. This is a typical maybe classroom environment, and we are going to consider it. We're going to ask ourselves the 3 questions: who, what, where. Who is doing the communicating? What is happening? What's being seen? What's being heard? Where are things located? We have circled the AAC user, and you can see at the lower left-hand corner, that is that little kiddo circled. And right there, you ask yourselves who, what, where. Where is that device? It's up on the shelf. Where are things located? They're right there. He can get them anytime he wants to. Where is peers? That's a great interaction. I'm seeing a fantastic opportunity in the classroom for that AAC user, because his peer is directly across from him and is able to play in that joint attention. However, where is that device? Are we really setting it up for successful communication there? We need to move that device down. All right, now let's look at this environment. This is not a classroom, obviously. We've moved out into the community, and we're at a restaurant. And we're going to ask ourselves the questions: who, what, where. Who is the communication partners? What's happening? Where are things located? So right here, they're in a restaurant, and this particular individual has her AAC system in her purse. There are several factors that go into this restaurant environment. Several people have said to me in the past that, well, she can just point to the menu and the waiter can give her what she wants. She doesn't have to use her device. Yeah, she could. But if she's like me and she just absolutely loathes onions and she wants a salad that comes with red onions, can she point to the picture and say no red onions? No, not really. That's not really authentic communication, is it? Can she point to or hold the mayo? Right. Some people might hate mayo. Mayonnaise, hold the mayo. Extra mustard, no ketchup. Don't get that anywhere near my food. That is authentic communication, and she's not really able to do that if her communication device is in her purse. So what happens is maybe we'll get into this in a few minutes, but maybe her communication partner can advocate for her to get the device up on that table and start talking. Some people have said, well, excuses. Some people have said, well, what if it's a quiet restaurant and, well, there's a thing called a volume button. And then last time I checked, if you are waiting tables, the ability to read is kind of a must. So she could have it on mute and use the speech display bar in order to communicate what she's wanting to order. And then look at her peer, her communication partner. It's a great situation for communication. They're directly across from each other, able to have that joint attention. However, how are they going to talk about things that are happening in their life right now? Because I know when I go to a restaurant with my girlfriends, we're not sitting in silence. And I think the majority of you are not doing that as well. So she needs to have that device out. So we are considering that environment. Who, what, and where. All right. So going back to that worksheet that you had, I want you to jot down. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, a little close to 3 minutes to do this. Jot down your environment, which influenced that communication. And based on previous trainings, I've had people have different environments, such as breakfast with friends, or a car ride, or conversations with the boss, or anything like that. And this was, you're looking at an example of my environment. Of course, I didn't do this morning. I did this a couple of days ago, but you get the general idea. So go ahead and do that, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. A couple more seconds. Okay, so we're going to move forward for the sake of time today. And what you see here in my environment, this happened a few days ago, is I was at a hotel. I travel a lot with my job. And so I was at a hotel, and I always stay at the same hotel in this particular city. And they had recently gone through some major renovations and upgrades. So the other morning I walked into the gym, and there was a person in there, and I said, "Good morning." There was a towel on the treadmill, and I said, "Are you using this treadmill?" Like I said, the hotel and gym got a new makeover, and I said, "The upgrades look nice." Of course, I'm talking to this person, and he probably doesn't even want to talk at all, but when you travel by yourself, you tend to just talk to anybody that's there because it gets kind of lonely out there. So this poor guy, he was probably just shut up, and I wasn't really gaining that social closeness I thought I was, but I tried. Then as I was leaving the gym, I said, I asked where the remote was because it was on a ESPN and I didn't want to watch sports. And then when I was leaving the gym, I said, "Have a good day." Then I walked into the restaurant and I said, "Can I see a menu?" I looked at the menu and I said, "I'll just have the buffet." Then I got coffee and I saw that I was running out of cream and I said, "May I have more cream?" The phone rang and I saw it was a client. So I said, "Hey, Sasha, how's it going?" And then she asked me if I could help her with a parent training. And I said, "Absolutely, I can help you do that." So you see how my environment influenced my functions of communication and vice versa. You see how those all worked together. So if we look back to the three elements of communication, we're going to see that that they all interdepend on each other. Another thing that we're going to see is that the communication partner plays a large role. So a communication partner is part of the environment and is perhaps the most important piece of the environment. And a communication partner is anyone with whom a person using AAC may interact. So it can be parents and family members, teachers and aides, school administration staff, therapists, healthcare workers, community members, peers and friends. It can be anyone with whom a person using AAC may interact. So ask yourselves the question, if a tree falls in the woods, does it still make a sound? If a person is talking in the woods, is it still communication? No, because what does communication have to be? It has to involve a sender and a receiver. So remember that communication is a two-way process. And there's going to be, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah. I apologize if you guys are hearing construction. They are building right outside my windows here. So if that is distracting, I apologize because sometimes it gets distracting to me. So sorry about that. But back to communication. It's a two-way process involving a sender and receiver. And ultimately, the success of the AAC intervention depends not just on the individual that requires the AAC, but also on his or her communication partners. The importance of a communication partner. 8 of 10 most frequently reported reasons for device abandonment were related to partner training and support issues. And I know that if I asked for a raise of hands of how many have experienced this, it would probably be 100%. I was on couple of years ago, I was Oh, thank you, Judith. I appreciate that. I was on the assistive technology team in Houston, Texas for 10 years. And we had a great team of speech pathologists, OT, PT, former special ed classroom teacher. And we would do these wonderful evals, and we would say, oh my gosh, this AAC system is perfect for this kiddo. We'd have the ARD, we'd place the device, we would go and give a quick training to the parent or the teacher, and then next time in 6 weeks, we'd come back and say, where's the device? Well, it's in the closet, or it's not working, or he's not using it, and all those excuses. And then we had to swallow some crow, and we realized, well, we failed as a communication partner. We failed with that partner training and support issue. So then what we did is we developed a implementation team, and I was part of that implementation and follow through. So what we did was we made sure that we went and we properly trained all the communication partners involved with that particular individual. And we saw an increase of device use and an increase of successful communication. So remember that the role of communication partners is crucial for achieving positive outcomes for people who use AAC. Let's look at the partner roles. Okay, some of our partner roles will be in assisting in operational components, being an advocate. So getting into the environment and seeing that the device is not there, advocating for our AAC user. You guys being here today on this webinar, you're being an advocate as well for your AAC user presently, and what possibly your AAC users in the future by learning. You're training yourself. Training the parents, being an advocate and training everybody involved. Your roles of communication partners include establishing goals and identifying barriers and monitoring that progress. It's obviously our role as communication partners to communicate and interact with our individuals. And when we're doing this, we need to communicate in this same modality, the device. So if we're communicating, if your individual is communicating with the device, we're going to communicate with the device. And in order to do that, we're going to have to learn that vocabulary. And we have to learn the vocabulary, to use the vocabulary, to teach the vocabulary. And that brings me to this. How many, I don't know, maybe you can, but if I've never been able to really read music, but if I wanted to take a piano lesson and I sat down and my piano teacher put this music and sheet music in front of me and said, okay, have at it, have fun, I'm gonna see what you can do, I would have no clue. I wouldn't have any idea of how to play the piano using that sheet music. And then I would turn to her and say, I don't know how to do it. Well, what would happen? What would happen if my piano instructor turned back to me and said, well, I don't either. I don't know how to do it. So that's exactly what we're talking about when we go back to, you need to learn that vocabulary in order to use that vocabulary to teach that vocabulary. Model. It is our role as a communication partner to model. It is, I can't stress to you how important, essential it is to successful implementation of AAC. Model. So let's look at modeling. When we're looking at modeling to verbal children, what happens is that, let's think of our little toddler. They're down at our feet. They're looking up with us with their hands raised, their arms raised, their hands, motioning, and we say, oh, up, you want up. We pick them up, we throw them up in the air, up, you want up, we put them down. That little person has the opportunity to verbally model that back to us. All right? So communication in, communication out is how we model for verbal children. However, modeling to individuals using AAC is a bit different, because when we model, if we verbally model to that individual, up, oh, you want up, then we stick the communication device in front of them, and then we expect them to model it back to us using the communication device. That's not how it works. That's not how it's going to work. That's not how we're going to be successful. So what we're going to do is not only verbally model that to them, we are going to use the device to model as well. Okay, so we're going to change our definition of modeling for our AAC user. Let's look at the topic of aided language stimulation. This is where the communication partner is use the AAC user's communication device by pointing to the symbol on the user's communication board or device while simultaneously talking. Okay, so let's look at these numbers. 50 to 125. That is the number of models of words or word sequences using the user's device before seeing the student use the word later on by him or herself. 500. This is the number of times a child just beginning to talk hears a word before it is part of his or her active vocabulary. So let's think about those numbers. So overall, aided language stimulation, overall the use of this strategy has been associated with meaningful gains in pragmatics, syntax, semantics, and morphology. So what do I model? Okay, well, you can model what you're saying to them. You could model to them what they could say. So this is an example. I think we saw this video earlier, but this is an example of modeling what they could say.
Merle, my turn. Now whose turn is it?
So you saw the SLP there. She modeled, they're playing a game, and she's modeling my turn. Not only did she model on the device, but she also verbalized it at the same time. She said, my turn. You can model, like I said, syntax and pragmatics. So for example, your AAC user says, eat cookie. You could model, eat more cookie, or eat cookie, please. You can model mistakes and repair strategies. This is also important too, because case in point, you've heard me mess up verbally a couple of times while giving this presentation, and you guys have been very forgiving of me doing that. But I have repaired my mistakes verbally. We need to let our kiddos, our individuals learning how to use AAC that it's okay to make mistakes, and we are going to demonstrate those repair strategies for them. Modeling operational use. This is for our older ones, those that are starting AAC, especially our little bits. They just have that way about them of figuring out the most difficult passcode and getting in there and wreaking havoc on what we've done to fix their device for them. So be careful. That's a little side note. Be careful of modeling operational use. We model at their language level in their access mode. So think about what language level they are in at. Oops. Okay, so if they are at a phrase level, we model at the phrase level. If they're at a two-word level, we model there. Model in his or her access method. So if they're using scanning, model in scanning. If they're using direct access, of course, model with direct access. So what can I use to model? Several things. You can use a companion device. How does that work for eye gaze? Well, that's a little tricky because you do have to calibrate with the eye gaze. So you might you might want to use maybe what do you call, low-tech version and model it that way. But model in front of them, don't model beside them. So model at their eye level. That would be a good idea to do. And, you know, every rule has an exception, right, Kristen? Okay, thanks. All right, so what can I use to model? We can use a companion device, and I know that in a perfect world, everybody would have a companion device, but that's just not true. So we can use their device to model. We can also use low-tech versions to model. And I believe it was Kristen that asked about the eye gaze. This would be something that you could use to model at their eye level. We can use the iPad with Touch Chat app. We can use the chat editor that is available on the Saltillo website, and I'll go through that at the end. Okay. So that is the roles of the communication partners, and you can see in the first half that we discussed that all of these are interdependent on each other. We need the functions and environments and communication partners. We need all of them working together in order to achieve that authentic communication. All right, moving right along, creating communication opportunities, arranging that environment to help communication occur. So what are communication opportunities? They're any situation in which someone could communicate. We need to make sure that they are authentic, they're motivating, they're meaningful, and they're age appropriate. This brings me to an example that I use for meaningful, age appropriate, and motivating. I mentioned earlier that I was on the implementation and follow-through team in my school district. And so what I would do is I would go in and do model lessons or model therapy for the SLP or the classroom teacher. And I had all grades, I had all age levels. So in the morning, I could have been at the elementary school and been blowing bubbles for a couple of hours and popping bubbles and eliciting language that way. But then in the afternoon, I had to go up to the high school with my transition kiddos. Well, I didn't necessarily bring my bubbles with me because although cognitively some might have been at that level where they enjoy the bubbles, I saw that it really wasn't an age appropriate or not that motivating of a situation or an activity, because by that age they've obviously been blowing bubbles for years. But what I did, I had this individual that I just couldn't reach. I just couldn't reach him, and I needed and wanted so badly for him to get comfortable with his AAC device in order for us to be able to transition him to community work. And he just wasn't having it. So I found out that he liked wrestling. and believe it or not, I did too. So I got permission, and I went and got wrestling magazines. And I brought in a wrestling magazine, and I adapted it to his language level. So what I did was I modeled on his device what he could say about each picture or each page we were talking about. I don't like him. He is mean. I like him. he is funny, he did this, he will do that, he will be on TV, that kind of thing. And man, I got him. He was hooked. Then I showed him the joke page. He was even more hooked. And we had successful implementation, and what eventually led to some authentic communication for him. So you need to make sure that that the opportunities are motivating and meaningful and age appropriate. So who creates these opportunities? Well, we do. The communication partner does. And when we're doing this, going back to the very beginning, we have to remember that technology is just a tool, and we have to focus on that communication and remember that it's the people and their interactions that are communication. So why create opportunities? Well, we know, first of all, our AAC users have fewer opportunities to communicate. So right now with our AAC users, people are more likely to communicate. When we have communication opportunities, we need to remember that people are more likely to communicate when they have a reason for doing so. And right now, those opportunities for our AAC users consist of focusing on requesting and labeling. And most of them are a result of that close-ended questions. Do you like this? Yes, no. Do you want this? Yes, no. And going back to that the opportunities are typically focusing on that right now. Does that really lend to authentic communication? And we're not really doing that. So if we don't give it to them, they're never going to learn the language because they're not exposed to it. All right, we are doing great on time, so you get to see the full video today. I'm going to show you this video. This is Ari. This was done a while back, and Ari is the son of one of our consultants, and she is taking the video, and she's the parent in the video. Ari is your typical 23-month-old, and he's eating a snack. So I'm going to show you this video, and while you're watching this video, I want you to think about who, what, where. Who are the communication partners? What are the functions of communication, and the environment? What's happening in the environment? What's driving him to communicate in that environment? And then if you can, kind of keep a tally of the number of communication opportunities that Ari has.
What? You need more muffins? You're happy? Those muffins good. Two muffins? Are you a hungry boy? You don't want to go in the car? What about home? You want to stay home? You don't want to go bye-bye? What are you going to do? You're going to play? What's Mama going to do? I'm going to stay home too? Okay. Daddy's at work. And Mama's home. When will Daddy come home? No, Daddy's not home. Mila's home. Oh, an airplane. Where's the
airplane?
Oh, in the sky. You don't see the airplane? It's outside. Daddy sees the airplane? Outside? Ari sees a house outside. Look, Mommy, what is that? It's chicken? I thought you were eating a muffin. Where did the airplane go? You heard it? And it's all gone. It flew away. Oh no. In the sky.
All right, that was Sweet Ari. And he is your typical 23-month-old in snack time with mommy. And as you saw earlier, he used 77% of core words, 23% of fringe, and his average MLU was 1.8. So what did the communication partner do? What functions of communication did Ari express? Did he request? Did he confirm and deny? Did he accept and reject? Comment? Ask questions? Relay past events? Did he direct an action to gain attention? He absolutely did. Did he answer questions? Yes, he did. Who were the communication partners? I mentioned earlier it was his mom. And what did she do? Did she model? She sure did. In the environment, was she close and at eye level? Not quite sure, but knowing her, she probably was. Was the food out of reach? Yeah, the food was out. He did have the milk, but his food was out of reach. How many communication opportunities do you think Ari, your typical 23-month-old, had? How many opportunities do you think he had? He had 46 communicative turns in 3.5 minutes. So this goes back to what I said earlier. If we don't give them the opportunity, they're never going to learn that language, and they're never going to learn that communication. So how many opportunities do we need? Let's look at numbers again. 36,500. This is the number of hours a typical 9 to 12-year-old has been exposed to and immersed in oral language. 701. This is the number of years it's going to take an AAC user to have that same experience. And if this doesn't bring home the importance of modeling or the importance of communication opportunities, I really don't know what will. So this brings it all home for us. So how many communication opportunities do we need in a day in order to catch these individuals up, so to speak? 200. Don't freak out. 200. If you think about it, one activity can equal 5 to 10 opportunities. So how can we create opportunities? How can we plan for communication opportunities? How can we plan activities that create these opportunities for our individuals? Well, we need to select an activity to create those opportunities. And when we're doing so, goes back to making sure it's motivating and meaningful, relatively brief, occurring 3 to 4 times a week, elicits communication from typical peers, or is reasonable to complete and support. So let's look at going up to the second bullet point, relatively brief, occurring 3 to 4 times a week. I was in Corpus a couple of months ago, and this individual is going into high school, but his particular class at the school, they made coffee every morning for the teachers. So what Chris's role was in that activity was to go to the teachers and take their coffee order, get their coffee order for the next day. Well, I followed Chris and his team to get the order. This activity occurred 3 to 4 times a week, and he was asking the questions. What do you want? What coffee do you want for in the morning, or something like that. But what was happening or not happening was, I saw that it was not really, the activity wasn't really allowing for him to have that authentic communication. It wasn't allowing him to greet individuals or have manners, exhibit manners, that social closeness. So I tweaked it a little bit to where he would greet, say hello. He would ask about how their day was. If they asked how his day was, he could answer back. So I looked at that situation or that activity, and I created more opportunities for him to communicate. Let's take a look at how we can do that. You should have in your materials a worksheet, the Look, Plan, Do worksheet. And this is going to be a great resource for you to create that communication opportunity in the activity. Excuse me. So look, plan, and do. Look, we're going to look at the environment of the activity. Who is communicating? What is already happening step by step? So for example, the teacher announces snack time. The students are washing their hands. The students are sitting down. In that particular activity that I told you about earlier with Chris, what's already happening in the environment. The teachers know that Chris is going to be there. He has his device. What's happening in the environment is they're taking the coffee orders. So where are things located? Where's the device? Where are the communication partners? Where are the materials that the AAC user may want or need? Now we're going to plan. We're going to plan for the opportunity by modifying that environment. We can move things out of the way. We can put materials in an opaque bag. We can have things up on a shelf. Sabotage. I love sabotage, and I know a lot of other SLPs and implementers do too. I get kind of that Dr. Evil laugh when I think about sabotage, because it is going to force them to communicate. Only give a small amount, and setting it up so the AAC user needs the help. Involve those peers. Involve the peers. They may not be on a communication device. That's okay. Involve them, because we're going to have to see what are these typical peers, or what are the peers saying verbally. Does the individual have access to communicate what and how his peers are communicating? That goes to determining what they could say, what the AAC user could say. So we're going to, when we're doing that, we need to target a variety of communicative functions and consider, once again, what the typical peers are saying. Consider their language level and using words or pre-stored phrases. Sometimes in activities like this, pre-stored phrases allow for that quick communication, which is fine in certain situations. Another thing we can do is choosing vocabulary activity first worksheet. And that's what this looks like. So in the middle here, here's an example. We have bubbles, of course. And what I'm choosing that motivating activity. Now I'm going to choose what they could say during that activity. Go, my turn, more, bubbles, blow, pop, look. And I'm also, when I'm determining what they could say, I'm addressing those functions of communication. And this is in your toolkit as well. So we looked at the environment, we're planning for the opportunity, and now we're going to help the client communicate. In order to do that, I cannot stress to you enough of knowing that vocabulary. We have to know that vocabulary, use the vocabulary to teach the vocabulary. Model the vocabulary. Provide that feedback that's needed. And then once we've done all of these, we've looked at the environment, we've planned for the opportunities, now we just go and do it. And when you're done with that activity, and I'm sure you've been where I've been before, I've been where you are, or vice versa, you have done the look plan, dude. You've planned this activity. It's so great. You're so excited. And then by the end of the activity, kids are crying, I'm sweating, the one teacher aide has quit, and I'm thinking, what in the world did I do wrong? Where did the breakdown occur during this wonderful activity that I planned for? So I need to ask myself the questions. Did I include target words or phrases across functions of communication? Was it meaningful and motivating? Was it age appropriate? Was I modeling? Did I communicate with my communication partners what their role was? Did I make sure they knew what their role was? So evaluate that, and once we evaluate each opportunity or each activity, we're going to absolutely learn from it. All right, so this brings us to other tips and tools, or other tools and tips. And I mentioned earlier that we have a chat editor that is a free software download that is on our website, and I believe Lisa put the link in the chat window earlier. This is a great tool for you to learn the vocabulary of your individual's AAC system. You can also use what we call the capture button to create visual supports. So a lot of our classrooms you see now is labeled, and that's great, labeled, chair and desk and clock and door and all that good stuff. But maybe if we switch it around and rethink labeling, we can label the functions. So for example, next to the light switch, I turn it on, I turn it off. Visual reminders in the environment of greeting and closing and starting conversations. And we can use that chat editor to do that. We can also use the chat editor to help program on the device. And in our devices, we have the ability to highlight buttons, so we can highlight your target words highlight the words you're targeting for that individual 6 weeks or that particular activity. You can also hide buttons and only show those targeted words. So the chat editor button capture, what it does is it captures your button sequence. And when you turn that on in the chat editor, you turn on button capture and it captures the sequence. Then you're simply able to copy it to a clipboard or Word document. So you just copy it, paste, and you can print them out. And then for more information, we do have free webinars on the chat editor at saltillo.com/webinars. Also, if any of you are attending the Texas Assistive Technology Network Conference this week, starting tomorrow, I will be there and presenting an hour-long how-to on the chat editor. So if you want to attend that, you can. So don't forget that achieving authentic communication, it takes time and resources. And hopefully today I gave you some resources that you can take with you. Don't forget that it's your role to train other communication partners. Now, I want to go back to it, don't forget it takes time and resources. I have this plaque in my office that I see almost every day, and it reminds me of my role as a communication partner. And the quote says, "The limits of my language means the limits of my world." All right? So if someone is limiting my language, they're limiting my world. So it is our responsibility to make sure that our AAC users have the opportunity to achieve authentic communication, that real, genuine communication. And hopefully after today, you have some resources and tools that you can do that with. Okay, this is the time for questions. So I believe, let's see, do we have, okay, when you talked about your push and therapy sessions, how long did you, okay, Kristen, your question is, when you talked about your push and therapy sessions, how long did you do that before the SLP or special ed teacher felt comfortable to do an activity on their own? Kristen, can you unmute yourself? If you're still on? Or do I have to unmute you? Okay. Kristen? Powell?
You have to unmute her.
Oh, okay.
Everyone's force muted.
Sorry. I'm gonna find you. You scroll down. Here you go. You're unmuted, Kristen. Do you want to ask your question again for me, please? Okay, maybe. All right. So her question was, how long did it usually take for my, I guess my example, I would go in and do example therapy sessions. I would do it 1 or 2 times, because I don't want to be an enabler. I don't want to be a crutch for them. So I would do it 1 or 2 times before I would feel comfortable handing over the reins. The first time I would do it all by myself. The second time I would involve them completely, and then I would let them do it on their own. And I hope that that answered your question. Are there any more questions? Yes, it did. Okay, great. No? Oh, yes, it did. Okay. Sorry. All right. You're muted again, Kristen. Are there any more questions? I believe that we addressed the resources for the chat editor. Is that right, Lisa?
Yep, I put the chat editor in there, and then I put the trainings. We have our next group of trainings, which are basically the same that we've offered this summer. There's one new training that will be introduced in the fall, which is Word Power Saltillo Getting Started. So those are already up on the website now, so you can already register for fall trainings. So what we're doing is 3 sessions per year, and we'll record them and put them on there on our website and on YouTube.
Donna, let's see. Somebody asked a question, would you consider daily interaction with the SLP a necessary event? It depends, and I hate to answer it that way. It depends. I have run across my newbie SLPs that are brand new, out of school, practicing for the first time, and I would spend more time with them than I would my more seasoned SLP. So I can't really answer that question with a definitive answer, and I think each one is different. Daily interaction, for the SLP, when certain situations is not even achievable, I get it. But take in consideration their learning level when it comes to AAC and how much time we need to spend with them. I hope that answered your question. Here is my information. You have, my name is Stephanie Reed, and you can reach me at stephanie@saltillo.com. So if you have any questions in regards to what you heard today on this presentation, or you need a resource that you can't find in your resources handout, go ahead and email me and I can get you that information. Also, you can go to saltillo.com and find your the consultant for your area. We are all here willing and able to help you in whatever needs you have in regards to Saltillo products. We can come out and do consultations with our device, and as you can see here, we provide training for each individual. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hope you guys have a great rest of the week.